Well, hello, and welcome to episode 204 of Drink the Movies. I'm Brian here, as always, with Michaela. And Michaela, it is the week of love, commonly referred to as Valentine's Day week here. And we're going to be celebrating with one of the most classic love stories of them all. It's a classic internet story. I know that for sure.
Yes, it is absolutely. It reminds me of my parents. 25 years ago, oh gosh, longer than that, 30 some odd years ago, my parents met in a
Wow.
chat room, just like in
Oh,
this. They don't
okay.
want anybody to know about it, but the cat's out of the bag now. But
Wow.
this
The
always
whole
reminds
world
me of
knows
their
now.
love
Yeah.
story. Yeah, this always reminds me of their love story, because it's about, when you connect with someone without ever seeing them, but then you're meeting them numerous times in real life, and you should probably recognize them through your heart cave, but you don't somehow. We throw in a little, I don't know, bookstore espionage in there just for good measure.
Mm, that's right. Yeah, little corporate takeover for sure. So, let's do this, Michaela. We're going to need a cocktail that is reminiscent of all the coffee they're drinking in this film today. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and brew up an espresso. Take a quick break, and we'll be right back to mix up this week's drink.
So, Brian, I don't
Hmm.
know. We've never talked about if you had seen You've Got Mail before, this week for the podcast. But one
Yeah.
of the things that I thought was really fun about it the first time I saw it in the theater was all of the references to Starbucks, because Starbucks was just about the hottest thing ever in 1998. It was on every corner. It was exploding. It was like the cool place to go. It was the cool place to work. It was the cool place to be. And
Hmm.
for I guess in 1998 for $1.73, you too could have an identity that was wrapped up in a tall decaf cappuccino, if that's what you wanted.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. Some very non-flattering things about people who are ordering stuff at a Starbucks, and we see how well that goes over here 30 years later. So we'll talk about that though when we talk about the movie. But yeah, we definitely need a coffee drink to get us into the mood to talk about You've Got Mail, because there's a lot of coffee drink there at Starbucks, at home, at the new bookstore that's being opened everywhere. You can look, you're having a coffee drink. This one is especially good because this one is played off of a Negroni, which is A, one of my favorite cocktails, and B, a little bit bitter. And both of our characters here seem to be a little bit bitter towards each other through the bulk of the film, and we'll talk about that too. But first, let's mix up one of these cocktails. So into a shaker tin with some ice goes 1 ounce of gin, 1 ounce of Campari, a half an ounce of sweet vermouth. And that's kind of where your Negroni base lies there. And this is where you're going to get the coffee edition. So go ahead and add a half ounce of coffee liqueur. You could use, I got a bottle of Mr. Black just for this cocktail because I've wanted a bottle of that for a while, but you could use Kahlua or any other kind of coffee liqueur you want to use, a half ounce of that, and then 1 ounce of espresso. So you can pick that up at your local Starbucks, which is what I did, which felt very apropos for the film that we're talking about today. Or
Nice.
you could brew up some coffee for yourself if you want to and do it that way. So go ahead and shake that with your ice and then strain it into a coupe glass or a Nick and Nora glass, or you could even do like a rocks glass with a large ice cube if you want to, and then garnish that with lemon peel, sip, and enjoy. Michaela, what do you think about an espresso Negroni?
I really liked it. It definitely changes the flavor of a Negroni. I didn't know how this was going to work exactly
Hmm.
at first. I found this. I knew that you love Negronis, so I was like, this will be a really nice way of extending an olive branch to make you go watch this movie that I figured you would not enjoy nearly as much as
Mm.
me anyway. And so that was
Well,
my olive
true,
branch. It was an
true.
olive branch of gin and Campari. But this is pretty
Okay.
good, actually. It's very exotic tasting, just kind of a strange mix. You get the bitterness from the Campari. You get the nuttiness of the espresso. You
Hmm.
get that sweetness with the coffee liqueur, but there's not much sweetness there. So it can pack kind of a punch. Um, I don't know. But I thought it was really interesting. It's definitely something that I would expect to see on like a mixology menu somewhere that's kind of strange and esoteric. Just because the two flavor profiles just seemed really at odds with each other, but it worked.
Yeah, it worked really well. I was also a little concerned, not concerned, but I was interested in how these flavors were going to come together. But I guess if you break it down, coffee, and especially an espresso, is a pretty bitter flavor, which is kind of the flavor components there that you're getting into your Negroni as well. So to that end, I thought that it played together really nicely. To me, this mostly just tasted like coffee. There's a lot of coffee flavors going on in here, right? 1 ounce of espresso and a half an ounce of coffee liqueur. And then, kind of on the backbone of that, you get, kind of that bitter herbalness of the Campari and the gin kind of coming through. So it just made for like a really interesting coffee-based drink. To me, I got a little bit more coffee than I did Negroni out of this myself, but I thought that this was really nice, and I thought that I could make it better. Michaela, I'm trying to remember. Maybe you remember. I don't know for sure, but I have my bottle of Campari there, and I was looking at it, and I remembered a few weeks ago, a few months ago, here on Drink the Movies, we did a Cacao Nib infused Campari. So I used that as well. That gave it a little, just a little like chocolatey adjacent nudge. That was
Mm.
also very delicious. So if you have any of that left over from that episode, I'll try to do some research and figure out what exact episode that was from because I'm drawing a blank on it now. So go ahead and mix one of these up and give it a try. Let us know what you think about the espresso Negroni. But for now, Michaela, let's go ahead. Let's mix up another one of these. Let's hit the dial-up modem and let's talk about You've Got Mail. We'll be right back.
I turn on my computer, I go online,
Welcome.
and my breath catches in my chest until I hear three little words. You've got mail.
Spoiler warning for You've Got Mail. If you've not yet seen this film, we're going to talk about all the things. We're probably also going to talk about a lot of Nora Ephron's things. So if you've also seen Sleepless in Seattle, maybe press pause, go watch both of those films because they're very similar. And then we're going to come back and chat about all the things. You've Got Mail.
That's right, absolutely. So you've had plenty of time to watch this if you've not had a chance to see it yet, because it was released in 1998. It was directed by Nora Ephron, as Michaela said, and she also directed 1993's Sleepless in Seattle and said, that was so much fun, let's do that again. So Tom Hanks is back to play Joe Fox, Fox, the bookstore mogul, who is going to force out of business and fall in love with Kathleen Kelly, who is played by, you guessed it, Meg Ryan. This one has a supporting cast worth talking about, so we'll get to them in a minute. Michaela, Nora Ephron also wrote the greatest romantic comedy of all time, When Harry Met Sally, which is a nice and tidy hour and a half. This one's 2 hours. We'll talk about that. But before before we talk about that, Michaela, why don't you tell me about You've Got Mail?
I'd love to tell you about You've Got Mail. So, You've Got Mail is a really interesting story about in 1998 New York in the fall. You've got Joe Fox who gets online. You've got Kathleen Kelly who get online. They get online through AOL and they meet in a chat room, in some strange chat room, and then they email back and forth through most of this film. Now, oddly enough, they both sort of know each other in the periphery because Kathleen Kelly has a store. She's got this really beautiful shop called Shop Around the Corner. It's a little kids bookstore. And Joe Fox is this big, I don't know, price gouging bookstore mogul, as you say, right? So they meet. And they this entire time that they meet in person, they've been talking back and forth about the most meaningful nothings that either one of them has experienced. They decide to meet kind of halfway through. Joe actually sees that it's Kathleen Kelly. He realizes that this would never work. And so the gig's almost up for maybe the second half of the film where he is talking to her, knowing who she is, and she has no idea who he is. They both kind of start out in different relationships at the beginning. She loses her store. They both end up breaking up with their respective partners. But in the end, all's well that ends well. And they realize, Kathleen Kelly realizes who Joe Fox is. He really is New York 152, which is 152 insights into her soul, Brian. And it's amazing. They kiss. There's a dog at the end. And then you got Carole King singing, "You could have been anyone at all." It's so great. Yeah. And that's how it ends. How's that? That was pretty short. I'm very proud of myself.
That was pretty short. I am pretty proud of you. Yeah, absolutely. So this movie, it definitely is playing on that very like mid to late 90s theme. If you are younger than us, you may not even know what AOL is. It does still exist, I guess, in some sort of fashion. Definitely not like it did back then, because if you had internet in the 90s, you either got it from like your local internet provider, like your mom and pop internet provider, or you had AOL.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so this really played on that. And that got me wondering, Michaela, the whole time I was watching this, and to answer your question from earlier, I had seen this before. And I remember it not sticking with me as much as the other Nora Ephron film, Sleepless in Seattle. But I had seen this before, but I'd only seen it that once, back, around the time that it came out. I probably caught it on home video or something like that in 98 or 99. But this is like the 90s in a nutshell. So I wanted to take a look and say, this is just a big commercial for AOL, right? That's why this movie exists. And it turns out, nope, not really. So this was actually based on a 1937 Hungarian play called Perfumery, which was adapted to the film The Shop Around the Corner, which is the bookstore's name in this film, in 1940, which was adapted into the 1949 musical film The Good Old Summertime, which was adapted into the 1963 Broadway musical She Loves Me, which was adapted into this film, You Have Mail. But it turns out that AOL were dumb, didn't trademark You've Got Mail. So they just decided, hey, we can use that. We'll write off the legs there of the AOL company. We'll turn it into an AOL story, and no one will be the wiser. This film basically serves as a time capsule for the late 1990s.
It serves as a time capsule for the late 1990s in New York City. And I think that's really important because it was just a couple of years after this, September 11th happened, and everybody had a very different view and idea of what New York City looked like.
Hmm.
My stepmother grew up near New York City, and this movie is kind of I think of a love letter to her in a sense because it's the New York City she remembers. Where you had the flower district and you have all these things still, but at the opening montage where you've got the Cranberries singing, everybody's got a Starbucks, there's one on every corner, they're all walking the streets, they have bouquets of sharpened pencils because it's the fall in New York. It's very like nostalgic and reminiscent of that very iconic kind of space and time, before kind of the innocence of New York was ripped to shreds, just a few years later.
Hmm.
To me, that is really how it feels. And so every time I see this, and it had been probably 20 years since I revisited this film, it brings up all of those kind of nostalgic emotions of things that our generation would know as we kind of grew up in this, you know, online era where you had to like wait to get your
Hmm.
mail. It didn't happen. We didn't have phones where it just instantly occurred. So like, this old fashioned love story, where people exchanged letters and fell in love that way. And this old fashioned sort of courtship is transformed into this modern day telling, which now seems very old fashioned. And I kind
Hmm.
of love that. Because this wouldn't happen today. You wouldn't find somebody in a chat room. I don't even know if those things exist anymore, but iconic nonetheless.
Iconic nonetheless. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess online dating was kind of a new thing at this time. Obviously, the film revolves around Joe in this kind of this big, huge, giant bookstore. This film came out in 1998. I think Amazon, I think, went live selling books on the internet in like 1995 or 1996. So it was kind of an examination of that, and everyone assuming that Amazon was going to put all of these independent little bookstores out of business. And yeah, kind of that came to fruition. I think that it's interesting though is that you have Joe who runs this big giant mega corporation, or at least is serving his father, I guess, who kind of owns the thing, and he's in charge of like the operations of getting this thing built. We'll kind of like rant against Starbucks there to that end, but I also think that it's interesting then because you have Meg Ryan's character, Kathleen Kelly, who is ranting against the big mega corporation of this bookstore, who's threatening to put her out of business, also patronizes the Starbucks every day. So there's a bit of a dichotomy there between that. So I think that is kind of interesting there in terms of the 90s. Obviously, you have like the AOL of it all, which hopefully all you listeners are out there are too young to remember the days of dial-up internet because it was terrible. But the AOL there and the You've Got Mail was very iconic. I want to take a quick break here to shout out Elwood Edwards, who was the voice there of the You've Got Mail, who passed away just this past November. So rest in peace. Elwood Edwards certainly brought a lot of people joy and played a large part in this film. So there you go, there you go. Michaela, let's talk a little bit about the supporting cast here because this for me is probably, not probably, it absolutely is the best part of the movie. Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, go ahead and step aside so we can talk about your co-stars here. Let's start with I guess the other members of the relationships that are going on that are pretty much stand up, seem really really nice and loving boyfriend and girlfriends. But Joe and Kathleen just going behind the back there on that chat room. What is wrong with you, you knuckleheads? So let's talk about the boyfriend and girlfriend. Parker Posey is playing Patricia Eden, Joe's better half, the espresso fueled Patricia Eden, and Greg Kinnear is playing Frank Navasky, who seems to be a very loving partner for Kathleen Kelly, is going to help get her out of a bind several times. He seems great by all accounts. Come on.
Oh, Brian, are you having a moral dilemma with the fact that they traded emails? Oh, that's sweet. I mean, I get it. Parker Posey, look, she's amazing in this film. This is the first time I ever saw her. She is terrific. She makes caffeine nervous, as Joe Fox says, right? She's like this super like obtuse self-centered person, but you couldn't like her anymore. Like it's so weird how it's stuck in an elevator and she's like more worried about her Tic Tacs than whether or not she's going to lose her life. And then Greg Kinnear, everything outrages him. And he somehow thinks that like the Luddite movement in 19th century England is relevant to today. However, he does really like Kathleen, although neither one of these ended up being the love of their lives. Oddly enough. And
That's
so,
true. That's true because we see
you
it in
know,
the very opening scene where Joe and Kathleen hide from their partners to go and get on AOL so they can email each other. Just to be upfront with your partner there. In this case, Frank is upfront as soon as he has develops feelings with someone else. Frank comes right to the forefront. He's like, oh yeah, I kind of did like that lady on the news. Maybe we should break up. And Kathleen Kelly's like, oh, that's a great idea because I've been chatting with this guy for like the last like 15 years or something. I don't know.
oh no. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, you're
yeah.
probably not wrong there. However, what I find interesting is that in both cases, they both go to their respective friends, right? So
Hmm.
Dave Chappelle is a partner in business or works for Tom Hanks's character, Joe Fox. And he's
Hmm.
like, dude, are you in love? What is going on with you today? Like, he doesn't remember anything. This guy's talking to him and he is miles away. And he immediately is like, oh, yeah, am I in love? I'm in love with Patricia. I'm in love with the Parker Posey character. Sure, I am. Sure, I am. And the same thing happens. With Kathleen Kelly, right? She's got her bookstore brethren. Jean Stapleton is amazing as Birdie, kind of her surrogate mother character. Steve Zahn is in here. Heather Burns, oh my gosh, so great. And they're all kind of uh, belly up to the register talking about how she's met this guy but she's not really met him and it's really not a big deal because she doesn't know him and it's just email and it's not sexual or anything like that. It's totally fine. But we all know what's up. They are connecting in ways that surely not connecting with their own partners, right? Which is kind of strange and maybe the point of the internet romance.
Maybe the point of the internet romance. Yeah, absolutely. You got the side characters are here. Dave Chappelle is great as kind of the guy to play off of Joe Fox there. Who I guess is serving as his like business confidant, but you'll see him like working out together, which is yeah, I guess you do, and things like that. And he like accompanies
Yeah.
him like on his like first like meeting, I guess, with
Mm-hmm.
or alleged meeting with Kathleen Kelly. But they've already met because Joe Fox is gaslighting her through the whole thing, basically that he doesn't know who she doesn't know who he is. But that's okay. That's okay. Steve Zahn is my absolute favorite here in the movie, though. Steve Zahn is amazing. He's hilarious and fun. Steve Zahn is also in the new series Silo, which I like a lot. So you can go check that out. Yeah, Steve Zahn is great. I like kind of I guess the group of friends here, especially of Kathleen Kelly, who are I don't know, like always having to like talk her off of a ledge, kind of. there from that as she's freaking out over the bookstore being closed. I do love there's a scene here where Kathleen Kelly has talked to Joe, right? Because Joe knows exactly who she is and he knows exactly what is bothering her, but he's not going to tell her that, right? He doesn't tell Patricia that he's having this intellectual relationship with this other woman online. He doesn't tell Kathleen Kelly that he knows who she is, so he's going to use that to his advantage and kind of talk her through these business dealings and things. And he's like, you have to be a fighter there, right? So then you get like on the busiest day ever at this bookstore. Kathleen Kelly's just back, like shadow boxing, like everyone's running around like a chicken with their head cut off. She's just back there jumping around. I'm like, get on the cash register, Kathleen. What are you doing? Pay attention.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I think that watching it as an adult, right? I mean, I still love this movie, but I do think that I was more questioning kind of the motivation behind what Joe Fox was trying to do. Because when you're younger, I don't know. I think what he was really trying to do is get her to admit that she could forgive him from putting her out of business, which is actually a huge deal, right? Like, and at the
Sorry, I
beginning of the
ruined your whole
film,
life.
right? I mean, that's it, right? So he realizes that she's it, right? And that's kind of how it culminates at the end when they have their conversation. He again, he is definitely priming her, and you can call it gaslighting, but he's definitely like making sure that she's really sure he's it, because he knows as soon as he tells her, as soon as she finds out that he is who he is, it's chances are very likely that she's going to say, yeah, you were this guy who wanted to bring me bouquets of sharpened pencils, but you're also the guy who literally ruined my life.
Hmm.
And I can't forgive that. And so, I mean, I cut him a little bit of slack there because he just wanted to see if that was possible. And it turns out it totally is. And he's a bazillionaire. So
It's a
what I don't know
pretty good
is
experiment for Joe. Yeah.
I mean, well, and to be fair, Joe didn't really know the timing of this is a little precarious, right? Because if this was a la French Kiss, right, what would have happened is Joe Fox would have used his billions of dollars of
Mm,
corporate,
hmm hmm
black money or whatever, and he would have figured out a way to save her business. And then he would have made sure that the shop around the corner continued to live, so that she could have her dream and she could have her mom, because that was a big thing about it. It was not so much that she loved the store, but it was something that she had that her mom left to her, and very sentimental in that space. I mean, that
hmm
would have been really cool. So you know what this means, Brian? That means that someday they're going to remake this film to be something like, I don't know, Apple meets Samsung, and it's going to be another technological feat of meeting someone that they didn't meet before in that way. And that'll probably be how it ends, is something magnanimous and sweet like that.
There
That's
you
my
go.
that's my guess.
And then You've Got Mail, the sequel. You brought up a really good point there, Michaela, because that drives home my last point here that I wanted to make. And you were aghast when you saw this on the notes, but I said Hallmark here as a Hallmark movie. And it's like the antithesis of a Hallmark movie, because if this was on Hallmark, right, Joe would have done those things, right? He would have used his bazillion dollars to save the bookshop, and he would have given up all of that to go and work for her, right, at the bookstore. There, they would have fallen in love. They would have had 19 kids. They would have done all of that. But in this movie, now Joe's like, nah, I'm still gonna like shut you out of business, and you're still gonna fall in love with me anyways. So I like it. It's like the antithesis of the Hallmark movie.
No, well, and I just want to point out that Hallmark movies started, okay, the Hallmark Movies channel started in January of 2004. So all the Hallmark movies that you've seen probably looked at this and said, you know what? I bet I can do this with less well-known actors and not as good writing. Okay. So you can just stop that right now.
They would
All
have they would
right.
have said they would have
Oh
said,
my God.
what would have been nicer is instead of
Yeah.
putting his love interest out of business, he would have helped her out instead and not
Yeah.
reshaped the entire look and feel of New York City, which is what you wanted to do
Yeah. I
there
don't
for
know.
sure, for
I
sure.
mean, yeah.
I want to talk about no, this movie is pretty good. There are some things that didn't, I think, particularly come into the year 2025 as gracefully as some of the other romantic comedies, especially kind of in the romantic comedies from Nora Ephron's brain and pen and keyboard and directorial stance there. But there are a couple of really great things on there. One of the things that I didn't care for though in the movie, very honest here. It is the runtime, and I don't even mind the fact that it was 2 hours, but it felt like this could have been like much shorter. We only get like literally so the film is 2 hours long, and they don't even like have their relationship like knowing who each other are until 1 hour and 56 minutes into the movie. And it lasts for 2 minutes, and she says, "I hoped it was you." They kiss, and then credits roll. That's the only time that they have their actual relationship where they know who each other are.
Yeah. No, well, is that true though, Brian? I mean, it
Yes.
is true. What you're saying is that they didn't know who each other were, but
I mean, he
this is the
knew who she
thing.
was for like the
He
hour
did.
before that.
But if you watch the movie, she did too, because there are moments that they have exchanged like it's one of my favorite scenes. I mean, I love this film, so everything's my favorite scene, but hear me
Hmm
out.
hmm
When
hmm
she is sick and he goes to visit her, right? Because he has decided she's the one. I really need to figure out how to break the news to her that I'm it, and that it was me this whole time.
hmm
There's a moment where he is putting her to bed. Like they barely know each other, right? Literally. She's in pajamas. She like is running around trying to clean the house. She grabs a trench coat to put it on because she's in pajamas. He barely knows her, but he tucks her into bed and he tells her as she's about to say something awful, he's like, "I'm doing you a favor." And they have this moment. And they had this moment in the bookstore or in the coffee shop when he meets her. He decides to go in and get to know her. And I think honestly, it doesn't say this, but I think he went in to explain to her that who he was, and because she was so upset with him and so like disheartened to see him and begged him to leave her sight, that he was like, "This is never going to work. I can't. I really do need to leave. I really can't. I
hmm
can't tell her the truth right now." Right. Now, some people could say that that's manipulation. I don't feel that way. I mean, I don't feel that it was, but of course, I'm the romantic amongst the two of us, right? But I think these moments, like she knew the first thing he says to her in the coffee shop was about Mr. Darcy and how they're never going to get together. And that's the exact same stuff that he's almost word for word, the same
hmm
thing that she said to him in an email. And that didn't tip her off. I mean, she knew. I think she knew within herself. And that's why at the end, she's like, "I wanted it to be you." So you're right in the sense that they didn't have this relationship but for the last 2 minutes, but in reality they were in that relationship since the beginning of the film because they were already connected. They already had it. And that's the thing. As a child who watched my father fall in love with someone he had never met before, that's the thing that's so fascinating because this idea that you can have this deep emotional intellectual intimacy and then life getting in the way because of the physicality of it all.
hmm
I kind of like that they don't even get into that because what matters is this connection that they've spent 2 hours building. Now, I don't mind. I didn't mind the fact that it was 2 hours long because I love the little kind of montages of what it would be like to live in New York City. A lot of
hmm
movies make it out to be this like hard and fast place, but this made it seem like a very family friendly place. I loved how Joe Fox's takes out his niece or his aunt and his brother, who
Yeah.
are much younger because they were an American family. I love like the montage of like what they would do for fun and how like families live in New York and grow up and still manage to like, be normal human beings and do that
hmm
sort of stuff. I love that piece. And unfortunately, that just took time out of, the Hallmark movie that we were all watching, apparently.
It was the antithesis of a Hallmark movie for sure. But no, the 2 hour runtime like wasn't really an issue. I would have liked it, I think, better had Joe at the end because they're having kind of almost like this like revelation to
Mhm.
Kathleen there as they're talking about like who is this
Mm.
mystery guy, and they're going around through the city. I think I would have liked it better had that been the moment when it came to fruition, and they could have had at least like 10 minutes of this actual relationship
Sure.
going forward. I think that would have worked a little bit better, at least in my eyes. I think you probably could have trimmed out a little bit of the stuff with the current boyfriend and girlfriend and snuck that up a little bit more kind of at the beginning of this movie too. but to that end, I do think that it is a pretty good movie. I give it a little bit of shtick there, but I do think that it is a little bit funny, kind of on some fronts there of how this relationship came into being, how it
Yeah.
works. And of course, she was excited to see him, when he came over when she was sick. I don't know how he knew where she lived. That's a different story. I don't know if anyone told him that or not. So that's a little creepy, Joe, for sure. But of course, she was excited. Maybe he was going to bring over some money to, pay for her bills now that he put her out of business. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, I just, well, I love the fact that even though she was so mad at him and he was so awful, she still felt bad by saying like the most, like the kindest mean thing you could say, where she was like, "Oh, you broke up with your girlfriend. You were so perfect for each other," and then she felt awful, and I was like, "I don't know why you're feeling awful. Um, they would have been perfect for each other, right? Like that's not a that's I don't know. I think she beat herself up a little too much. But that was part of her charm because she was enchanting, just like her mom. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I think what's also important, and then we can wrap up if unless you have anything else, is that this gets a lot of there are kind of two movements to Nora Ephron's people who love Nora Ephron's films, right? Like,
Hmm.
first of all, we're not even going to talk about When Harry Met Sally because that's in a class of its own. That is probably the greatest like love story in the world. I love it so much.
And there
So,
was When Harry Met Sally commercial at the Super Bowl last night, which was
oh
amazing.
my gosh, that is amazing. I'll have to look that up. But people have said numerous times that Sleepless in Seattle is one of the best romantic comedies of all time. It is not my favorite of the two, right? Like, well, and they have this trifecta of um, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan movies, right? There's Joe versus the Volcano, there is Sleepless in Seattle, and then of course there's You've Got Mail. And my favorite by far is You've Got Mail. I don't really know why. Probably because it's nostalgic to me. It reminds me of my parents. And it reminds me of me when I was 17. I mean, thinking and having my own internet like love, right? Where it was like, oh my God, this is
Hmm.
the most amazing thing in the whole wide world. And I don't know anything about them. And it's just great. So, yeah, that's my feeling on it. A lot of people disagree because everybody loves Sleepless in Seattle. I don't quite understand it, but yeah, that's my take.
That's your
There we
take.
go.
All right. Well, there you go. So that is You've Got Mail. So let us know at home if you've watched You've Got Mail. Let us know if you had AOL Instant Messenger, what your handle was. That'd be good to know. I definitely used AOL Instant Messenger, although I was not an AOL full-blown user myself. Michaela, I don't know about you, but I do know that the espresso Negroni was a delicious cocktail. So go ahead and mix one of those up. Send us a picture of yours, and you can see pictures of ours on our website, www.drinkthemovies.com. You can go there, episode recaps, pictures of the cocktails, links to the merch shop, links to Drink the Video Games, all that stuff to the Patreon is there on the website, drinkthemovies.com. Speaking of Patreon, we've got a lot of fun stuff going on here. It is Oscar month here at Drink the Movies. So we've got our Oscar Best Picture nominee recap episodes going out all month long. We've got hangouts, all that stuff. So you can go to patreon.com/drinkthemovies for more information about all the bonus content we've got going on. And we appreciate our patrons so much. So, Michaela, why don't you tell everyone what your AOL handle was, and then also where they can make sure that they're following along for all the good stuff we've got coming out here on the podcast.
Well, I didn't have AOL. I had Prodigy, and my
Oh,
handle was
oh,
Ephanine 101. And yeah, if you know, you know.
okay.
Um, and and if you want to find us, it's very easy to do. We are on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Good Pods, anywhere where Spotify podcasts are supported and distributed. We do 2 drops a week. If you're liking what you're hearing and you've never subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Welcome. We are so excited to see you and have you. Send us a note about anything you like regarding movies and cocktails, or music and cocktails, or video games and cocktails. We are super excited to build out this community. We didn't do that. Y'all did it. And if you want to, you can always leave us a review. There's a way to do that on every single platform we have. It really helps us get all the Drink the Movies out there.
Absolutely. So that wraps it up here for You've Got Mail. Hopefully, everyone out there has a fun and festive Valentine's Day, and we'll talk to you next time on
Drink
Drink
the
the
Movies.
Movies. Don't cry, shop girl.
I wanted it to be you so badly. It's so good. It's not a Hallmark movie. Hallmark movies dream of becoming this good.
It's the opposite of a Hallmark movie, was my point.